Hi, this is Dr. Saldivar with another episode of the Way to College podcast, another special episode. So, if you've been with the podcast for a while now, you're familiar with Miss Aimee Nunez. And Aimee is a counselor and college advisor and wears many hats. But she is a friend of the podcast and is always gracious to join us and give us some tips, insiders, any changes to the college application landscape. And so today is August 1st. And if you're applying to colleges, if you're a high school senior, you know exactly what today means. So I've invited Aimee on, and we have a special episode of the podcast. So Aimee, maybe brief introduction, and then let the world know why today is meaningful for our high school seniors.
Sure. So, hello, everyone. As Dr. Saldivar mentioned, my name is Aimee Nunez. And yes, I work with high school students. I think a long time now. I don't even remember the years. Those of us that have done this long enough stop counting sometimes, unless we're hopeful that retirement's coming. But FYI, it's not for me. It's a long time. So yes, I've been doing this work for quite a while. August 1st is a big deal because the CommonApp platform has officially rolled over, and college applications typically open up August 1st. So students, those of you who maybe created your CommonApp account during junior year or maybe this summer, will want to log back in. It's kind of been down for the last couple of days because the CommonApp has been updating. So today, August 1st, you're able to log in. It's going to ask you when you're graduating because it wants to give you the right, dashboard to land on or like questions. So you answer those questions and then your account pops back up and you're able to see exactly where you left off. So it's a big day. It's a big day. Counselors who like nag their students like I do have been spamming our kids and emailing our kids like August 1st is coming. Make sure you log in, update everything, update your education section, all the little things that you have to make sure are done correctly before you submit anything. So it's a big day, August 1. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for that introduction. Thank you for the context and kind of laying the landscape for us. Aimee, since last year, have there been any changes or updates to the Common App that students need to be aware of?
Yeah. So I think what I want to do really is highlight areas that are newer. So not necessarily that they're brand new to this year, but maybe they've been missed in the past because they were new for a little bit. So, and this is also from the counselor perspective, counselors or educators who are, listeners of the pod. Um, if you support students with college apps, but you have ginormous caseloads and it's hard for you to like keep up with these changes, and it's nothing that has to do with you, it's just your time is, it's hard to juggle all the things you do. So I want to make sure I highlight these two so we can log in and like look at those areas and point them out to our kids. So one of those is called the direct admissions section of the Common App. Direct admissions, literally like what it sounds like, direct admissions, that universities who are partners in this program. So it's not every school that's on the Common App, it's the schools that have chosen to be part of the program, are screening the information students enter, including their education, right? And so that's why I'm saying it's important to get back in there and update that GPA and that rank that's updated for you when you come into senior year, update all of that so that these schools can screen you, the partner schools that are working with this program. And if they feel, based on their qualifications or requirements, if they feel you could be a direct admit, you'll get a notification in that tab. Like, hey, check these schools out. You could be a direct admit, check them out. And so if you decide that you actually like one of those institutions, you go and do your research, look them up, look up their admissions page, look up the program you want to major in, look up the community. That's a whole other, I know, combo, but look up the community and student life. If you're excited for that school after doing that, and you've been notified you could be a direct admit, all you have to do is add the school to your Common App and submit the application, right? Because you need the official app to be submitted. And so we call that in our world like likely schools or safety schools, if that terminology is very common in the college counseling world. And so That's how I describe it to my students. That direct admit section is like your likely or safety section. And maybe it's already recommending schools you never even thought of. So it's kind of a helper in that. It's also helping Common App reach its goal of, making things more accessible, right? Students who don't have personal college counselors or consultants are receiving this information just right there within their account. And so that's the direct admit section, right? So students who don't have the extra layer of support, whether it's because it's not affordable or because you're at a large scale school where unfortunately your counselors have giant caseloads, this is something you can use to help support your college list using that direct admin button right there inside Common App. So that's the one section that I would like to point out. It's kind of new. It's been around just a little bit. And it's something that can go unnoticed because it's not part of your application tabs. You might not notice it because you're so focused on your profile and the school applications themselves. So want to make sure that everyone visits the direct admissions tab in your Common App account. As soon as you update all your info, start visiting that tab and see if it has any suggestions for you. Okay. And I'm looking over. I actually opened mine up because I wanted to see what, our dashboard. There is also a financial aid tab that's there.
Mhm.
That's more in line with resources. And it's just going to give you, again, students who may not have that support. It's going to give you some resources, some links that you could visit to learn a little more about the financial aid process. So that's an informative one. There is also another program now. I don't see it now, and you might not see it now with rollover, but I'm assuming as we go deeper into the August, it might pop up. There's scholarship information as well. So the Common App, based on your profile, may suggest certain scholarships that you can go and check out and see if you do qualify and consider submitting. Big. I was gonna say, like, big takeaway: if students, parents, if there's a scholarship that your student looks like they qualify for, submit the app. Like, submit it. Don't think about it. Don't
Yeah,
think about it.
yeah,
Submit it, right? Scholarships, it's like applying to college. You've got to look for them and you have to actually submit them to have a
yeah.
shot at it. So use those tools within Common App to help and support those efforts.
Perfect. Beautiful. Thank you. Anything else that maybe is, like you said, newer or that students or parents aren't paying very much attention to?
So I'm not gonna. I'm thinking about maybe something that's missed in part of the application process that when I've worked with a student who's maybe not at my school, and I have to point this out, like, have you done this? And it's typically missed. Is something called the stars. And so the stars used to be called the SRAR. Now they added a T because they want to call it the something transcript or other. It's the stars. It's basically a self-reporting platform. Students miss this because they're going to go in and they fill out their application in Common App. They hit submit and they think, I did it. I submit it. I'm done. Well, there are a couple of institutions that also require a self-report, meaning I need to log into this account like the stars or a platform, sorry, create an account. And now I have to self-report every single course I've taken for high school credit and what those grades are and the level the course was. And I've got to do that course by course. This one takes time. And if you're interested in a school like A&M who requires it, and A&M does admit students on a rolling basis, even though you don't see them call themselves a rolling admit like on the website, they're filling seats as you apply. So you've got to submit the stars as well as part of your application. And that's something that can be missed. Other popular schools that use it are like Baylor, UTSA. They also utilize it. So just kind of keep that in mind. You're going to want to check if your college, the ones you're applying to, require something like the stars, like a self-report of your transcript, so that you know exactly where to do that. Now, the popular platform is stars. Also within Common App, this can happen. So I can apply to a school that requires the stars platform like A&M, and I got to go do it there. Or there are going to be schools that require it within the Common App, and then a tab will pop up and tell me I have to self-report in my Common App account. So yes, unfortunately, you might have to do the stars, and you might have to self-report in Common App as well, depending on the schools on your college list. But I feel like stars kind of gets missed, and it's one of those that I have to ask about. With the student
Yeah.
names some of those institutions you're applying to, I'll ask, have you started your stars account? It's usually a no. Um, and just FYI, underclassmen, if it's after ninth grade, you can go make an account and you can already start putting your information in and just update it every year. And now you've got like one less like heavy thing on your plate when it's actually time to apply. My students who have been with me for a minute, they're just logging in and putting in 11th grade at this point and just getting ready to submit it, because we did it ahead of time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's good to know. That's important, right? That students, one, well, all of this information about the stars, but also just paying attention to what is required by each institution, because
Yeah.
I feel like there's this, and we can get into, we talked about like myth busting,
Yeah.
this idea that, well, isn't just like once they do the Common App, like everything's the same and it's the same for every school, but it's not. And if you change your major, the questions change, and so every school's different. And so I'm glad that you pointed that out, particularly for the stars.
Yeah.
What are some other common myths or maybe misconceptions that students have as they're filling out the Common App?
Oh my gosh, this is a good one. Yeah.
How much time do we
How
have?
much time are we doing here? Um, Top one for me is getting into college is hard.
Yeah.
Look, the work, I get it. It's not easy, and some schools have a lot of things they need you to submit. Um, but most institutions in the US have high admit rates. Okay. So getting into an institution is not difficult. What becomes difficult is making your list that makes sense to you. Okay, then you've got to put some like more work into that. Unfortunately, the schools that are being talked about in the news and on social media are the schools that are highly selective and they become popular for those reasons. It doesn't mean that they should be on my college list. So that's like myth number one, getting in is difficult. No, you can get into a university. Um, However, like I mentioned, what an error I might see or that I've noticed often with students is that their list will be full of selective institutions, that college list. And when we talk about it and I say, let's talk about it, I do, by the way, ask my students to give me rationale. Tell me why. And it has to go beyond the name of the school.
Yeah.
You can't just tell me, well, because it's Brown University, like, why wouldn't I apply? No, there are lots of reasons why you shouldn't apply. Why should you apply? And
Mhm.
and and I tell them we have to be able to talk about it and have a conversation. And if you can't have a conversation with me about it, then it probably doesn't belong on your list. If you don't have very firm rationale for why you're going to apply and why you would actually go, you're wasting time. Applying to college takes time, right? And so that's kind of like the tip that like tip number one that goes with that, but busting that myth, making sure your list is one that is practical and makes sense to you, the student. If you've got a list of 10, you should be able to envision yourself at all 10,
Yeah.
right? If your list is 20, now here's another one, right? Like myth, whatever. Myth number two, I should apply to like 100 schools to up my chances. So let me just put this out there. I say it all the time to students. Just because you submit an application to every Ivy school doesn't mean you're going to get into one of them. That's not realistic. Like the math tells us statistically what those odds look like, right? So I would never say it's not that you wouldn't get into one of them, but applying to all of them does not up the chances of getting into one,
Yeah.
right? And if anything, we're adding so much more work to your plate as a high school senior, balancing all the classes you're in, your sports, your clubs, band, all the things. And on top of that, you're going to apply to all these reach schools. Why? Right? Like, why don't do that to yourself, So that would be a second myth that I always point out to students. If I see a college list that's just packed with reach schools, let's get realistic here. Which of these can you really envision yourself at? Which of these can you talk about? And which of these are financially feasible? They have to be financially feasible with your family and the budget they have for college. And if all of those things line up, then some of those schools can make a lot of sense on the list. And, so that's myth number two. Applying no, like, let's not do that to ourselves. Your college list has to make sense to you. You have to be able to talk about every school and it has to make sense. So that would be the second one there that, I definitely stress when I'm talking to students who, are really reaching for like tons of schools on their list. Yeah, no, I do say, no, you know what? We're going to trim this down. Let's see which ones are actually practical and reasonable. And then we move forward from there. So making sure that the list is nice and balanced, not
Yeah.
just full of those like reach highly selective institutions.
So I think the key word balance, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now that we've realized, okay, I've got to have a balanced list. What is another common myth or misconception that maybe informs a lot of students as they are applying to school?
I think, yeah. So another here that I can think of, not necessarily a myth, maybe more misconception, or um, when you fill up the list, it's ready, and then I've had a student tell me, for example, oh, such and such school is there because I know they're going to give me money. Okay, how do you know? Did you go look on the financial aid website? Do they have assured scholarships that you're qualifying for? Do you see it there? And that's not always the case because they see a likely or a safety school. A misconception is, they're going to offer me a lot of money. I'll be good. Yes, there is. Yes, they could, right? They could, because if your academic profile is much stronger than at the incoming class at that institution, yeah, they're going to want you. You look excellent on paper, right? Like they're going to want you at their school, and they might, yes, dangle a scholarship in their acceptance letter. But is it, what are the assured scholarships? Have you looked those up just to know, at least up front, what you are going to be offered? And one institution I can think of who, shout out to them, I love that they do this, is Texas State. Texas State University on their website shows you a list of assured scholarships. And so students who know their rank and have been testing and have that like highest score that they've gotten can go check. If I'm admitted here, I'm assured these scholarships over 4 years, right? And so that makes sense when you put a school like that on your list, like Texas State University, if it's a likely option on your list, and you can go and see the assured money. And then that's a wonderful piece of information that's helpful, when you're building the list. So assuming a school is going to give you money automatically, that one's tough. You've got to go check. Do they give that information on their website? What can you count on for sure? Those are things to look at. So making sure that your list is financially reasonable, I think I already said that once, is so important. So important. So to students who listen to this pod, that is a conversation you want to broach with your family before senior year, right? Ask the question, what is the budget like for me to go to college? Parents, who listen to this podcast, colleagues, you've got kiddos coming up in high school, they need to know. You need to be transparent. Like, please do them that, favor. They can't go into senior year thinking they can apply everywhere and that they're going to be able to attend if it's not financially going to happen as a family, right? So that's another big tip there, something to remember. When the families I work with, I just say it. You guys need to talk, and everyone needs to know what the budget looks like. Everyone needs to know what they can count on out of pocket before, getting so excited about this final college list. You have to have talked about it. And I don't know if you've ever experienced that, Dr. Saldivar. It's really, really sad when that doesn't happen. And then they have that, admits. And then parents say, like they're excited. And then the parents are so unfortunate. Like it's heartbreaking that they have to have then the conversation. Like you got in, but I can't, like, we can't afford that.
Yeah. I think so. I have encountered parents, and I think back to way back when I was applying to colleges, right? I think a lot of families are like, we'll worry about it when we get there. We'll
Mm-hmm.
worry about it when, you're admitted, and then let's see what financial aid can offer. And then we'll figure out a way to pay for it. Unfortunately. And I think, we have the benefit today of sort of seeing the landscape, being aware of it, and student debt, what student debt looks like. And so if families have these conversations earlier in this process, then there's a greater likelihood they're going to save on the back end, right? And they're not going to have encumber the kind of debt. I know I would have done things very differently throughout my education process, which is partly why we do this now,
Mm-hmm.
is so that other
Yeah.
students avoid those traps.
Yeah.
So thank you for pointing that out. Um, any other things that you see that students maybe come to you with, and if they'd only do this, or if you make it a point to kind of give them this information, because maybe too often it goes unnoticed, unrecognized, or there's just lack of awareness.
Yeah. So I think something kind of, and I'm going back to like foundational, honestly. And because I find myself explaining this, what I'm about to talk about often, even with an incoming senior, it's just the basic terminology for admissions. And so I'll have an incoming senior ask the difference between early action and early decision, for example. Right. And in my counselor brain, I'm thinking, oh no, like I should have taught this when they were in ninth grade, or maybe I did, but maybe I didn't reteach. Right. And it's something that I find that I explain again and again. And I've had to explain early decision to a parent whose kid didn't talk to them and they applied early decision. And then I had to be like, oh, here's what's happening, So it's very important for families to understand those differences as well as the student is selecting what cycle they're applying to, right? So there are many cycles within the application. And so a student can apply regular, and I'll tell the student we can go regular decision. You're going to apply before the final deadline, but you're also going to learn a little later in the spring. If you go early action, you're not binding to any school. If you get in, you just get in early. That's how I explain it. It's literally that. Early action means you get a decision much sooner, and you're not binded to any institution. You're not promising them you're going. Early decision is a big one here that I think families need to understand. Early decision is going to bind you to an institution, meaning if you're admitted, you're essentially promising that you're going to attend. There is a little unwritten little note. Those of us who are college counselors know that if the school is not financially reasonable at the end, there is wiggle room for you to talk to the institution about, like, hey, this isn't going to work out. However, if you do your homework ahead of time, like I mentioned earlier, and already know you can afford that school, then you don't have to go through that, right? You get in, you're going. You've already talked about the finances. You don't want to have the conversation later. So early decision means you're so excited for that institution. It's well researched, as in you've done your research, and the family can afford it out of pocket if necessary. You know all those things, and it would be your top choice if you got in. That's an early decision school. If you don't know if you can afford it, it's not an early decision school. We don't do early decision, right? Like that's a big part of the conversation. So
Yeah.
I think that's one just kind of foundational piece that I find myself reteaching, sometimes an incoming senior even, if they hadn't retained that, through the years. These are the different cycles, and you're going to make the decision on which cycle you're applying with or to. And there's rules, and you've got to know the rules. You can only apply early decision to one school at a time. You can't put in an early decision to all the schools on your list. Um, or you shouldn't. It's kind of an honor system. You should not. And there are some early actions that have some restrictions. So making sure you check those. Typically, it's our like highly selective private, well, almost all of them are private institutions, but for example, Harvard is one. You can apply REA, restrictive early action, to Harvard, but then they have a rule about where you can't or shouldn't apply early. So making sure you understand the application cycles as you're like filling out your applications, because they will ask you, how are you applying? What cycle? You're going to have to indicate it on your application. So I've had students who say, I don't want to be binded anywhere. I want options. And they'll refuse to do early decision, which is it's their choice. And they'll go like early action and regular, across the board. And then you've got a student who's like, Rice is my number one. I am going to Rice if I get in. And as long as they've had all the important conversations with their parents, I'm like, cool, early decision it is. Let's go. Right. And so that is something to keep in mind. Please check on the application cycles for each application you're working on so you understand what the options are and how you're going to move forward with that.
Thank you. And thank you for distinguishing that and but then also for going sort of a little deeper and talking about, well, what does early decision mean? What does early action mean? Um, talking about, and I think the biggest takeaway for me from that was, um, can you afford it? And, are you really excited about that school? It's not just like you said, oh, well, I'm going to increase my chances by applying to all of these schools, early action or early, right? So thank you for that. Aimee, I want to be mindful of your time. And so as we transition out, is there any other piece? Um, and I know there's so much to the Common App, and like we didn't even get into essays. We've talked about that before, but I think we can come back later and talk about those. Are there any other pieces, or is there anything else you'd like to talk about before we transition out?
Oh, yeah. So this is specifically to parents, guardians. This is my thoughts. Um, please allow your student to own the process. I understand the urge. I'm a mom, been through this process myself with one of my kids. I understand the urge to constantly ask and ask and ask. Where are you at? Where are you at? Did you work on this? Did you work on that? Did you submit? This, deadline's coming. Have you submitted? Like, I understand that as a parent. It comes from a place of love and concern and care. And that's all beautiful. However, you're talking about a 17-year-old kiddo, 18-year-old kiddo who has to understand how to own this type of process. So my biggest advice there that I picked up from a podcast a while ago that I heard, and I was like, yes. I wish I could quote who it was. It'll come back to me. But this person on this podcast said or suggested, pick a day of the week, and that's when you talk about it. So on Tuesdays, only on Tuesdays are you allowed to ask questions about their application. And you'll actually maybe sit together and they can show you the progress they've made. And then you leave them alone the rest of the week to own the process. And it's like, it's scary as a parent, right? Because this is college and we've talked about it since they were little, and you bought them the t-shirts. And if you're an alum of a school you're proud of, I'm sure your kids own swag because you raised them in that swag. And it's so important to you that they don't miss deadlines. But they need to write their own essays. They need to write their own supplements. Just like FYI, college counselors, consultants, we can read into that. We know when mom or dad had a hand in that essay. We can tell. You can tell when it's not coming from the perspective of a 17-year-old. It's like, we can tell that. And so can admissions readers. Like they can read into that. So parents, it's hard. We want to be involved in the process. Let them own it. And yes, check in. And if you're fortunate enough to be able to afford a consultant, you have that adult that you can talk to and allow the student to own it and run with it while you do check in, maybe weekly, and see where they're at. Use any resources available to you at your high school. Many high schools, not all, unfortunately, but many high schools do have some type of role like a facilitator, or sometimes it is a counselor who is in a classroom at the school supporting kids with these processes. right? So parents, inform yourself. Is there a person at my child's school who supports with this process? Is there a facilitator? Is there somebody assigned like college and career counselor or Go Center facilitator, or, find out. And then that could be another person that you're, checking in with on the progress your child is making. So please, please let your kids do the work. They need to do the work. It's their application, and they should be admitted to schools that honor their work, right? And that's what we want our kids to be proud of. The schools are admitted to their want them because of what they submitted, their work, the quality that they put in there. And that's what you want as a parent. You want that reward to be felt like it's their work that got them there, including the writing of the essays and the supplements. Please don't log into their CommonApp and start answering questions for them. you know, please, let's not do that. you know, kid, this is like one of those scenarios. Like, to me, I equate it to like a teenager getting a job, right? They're going to go learn things about themselves. They're going to have these skills they're going to polish by having a part-time job while they're a teenager. Applying to college is very similar, right? They're balancing deadlines. They have to be responsible for them. If they're working with a counselor, they've got deadlines with their counselor. Like, they're learning these skills that are like life skills, and you want them to go through that process. So this last one is more for families and guardians. And yes, let them do the work. Let them own it. Still be a parent, still ask questions, still check in, but let your kids own this work. It's a big deal, and it's for them to own and learn from.
I love that. I appreciate that. Yeah, I think like you know as well as I do, if you do this work, you sometimes parents want to be a little more involved than others. But you're right. You can tell where it's coming from and when it's not coming from the student. So I appreciate that last piece of advice. Aimee, what I'm going to do is I'll ask folks if they have any questions, and and I'll have them respond, to the episode. But thank you again. Thank you for your time. Thank you for always just being so eager to share information with parents and with students. I really appreciate that and value your expertise.
Thank you so much for having me. This is always a blast. I love talking to your listeners, a wonderful group of individuals. So I always have a blast here. Thank you for the invite.
Absolutely. This concludes a special episode of the Way to College podcast. Thank you to our guests. Thank you to our listeners and viewers out there. And so if you have any questions, if after watching this video you've still got questions, and I'm sure everybody's going to have questions, go ahead and post them in the comments, and we'll do our best to answer. Because this process doesn't begin and end today. It can be a long process. You have time. And so, we'll try to get you the answers that you're looking for. But thank you again, and we'll talk again soon. Bye-bye.